in what has been a wide-ranging address there. It's going on 2 hours, 15 minutes. Dr. Nsizwazonke Yende is a political analyst with the University of Mpumalanga. Dr. Yende, it's a great pleasure talking to you. And I know that you've been doing your best to follow the discussion, the address being given by Julius Malema there in Nasrec. It's 2 hours, 15 minutes. It's still ongoing. And to say that it's wide-ranging is probably an understatement. So is it a difficult question when I ask you what stood out for you?
Good afternoon or good evening, afternoon to you, Michelle,
No,
as well as the viewers at home. Yes, it's afternoon. Sorry. I think indeed it's quite long, and part of what stood out for me is how the president of the EFF, Julius Malema, tries to taking the organization back to its roots and looking at the ideology of the organization. Because if you listen, almost the first 45 minutes of the speech or of the address by the president, it was mainly to bring back the organization as to where is the organization coming from, characterizing the organization from both the likes of the Lenin, the likes of Marxism, as well as the likes of Frantz Fanon, the likes of Thomas Sankara. So I think the first part of the speech was mainly about to try and reposition, to recontextualize, as well as to characterize the organization as in terms of how and why the organization exists, where does it come from. So I think that was part of what made the speech of Julius Malema to be a little bit long, because the reporting, it came after almost an hour in terms of what they've managed to do and what they could not manage to do as an organization. So I think that was one part for me that stood out in the speech, because in him trying to characterize this, you could see that he's trying to bring back in terms of where does the organization come from and what does the organization stand for. So that basically stood out for me in the speech.
Yeah, he's gone back to basics, as you say. He talks about the fact that this is a quote from the beginning of his speech: "Ours is a class struggle. The economy must be brought back to the hands of the poor." So when he talks about other long-standing issues going back numerous years, he's touched on COVID-19, the vaccine rollout. He's talked about the clicked racism saga from a few years ago. And a whole range of other issues, Dr. Yende, from many years ago. He's also touched on the death of Andries Tatane. I think that was back in 2011 or 2012, if I'm not mistaken. Is that the kind of speech you think? I mean, we all know that the context is so incredibly important in South Africa, and we've got a long history of struggle and a long history of failures of government, things we could have done better. We've just come out of a pandemic just a couple of years ago. But is that the kind of speech that, in the context of a people's assembly, takes the discussion forward for the delegates that have gathered there?
I think at one point, I think such a context is very important. Looking at the organization and how they've performed in the elections, because all of these of what he's saying is trying to talk about how, for instance, the issues of COVID-19, the issues of rollout, the issues of racism and all of that. He's trying to contextualize in terms of how, despite what they've done in the public domain and what they've done, for many people in South Africa, how it has not materialized in terms of them, advancing in the election. Because all of this, it emanates from the mere fact that the EFF, despite that indeed they are still, largest organization in South Africa at the top 5, but they have not done well in the last election, particularly the national and the provincial election. So I think this comes from that particular perspective to say that, yes, there is a lot that we have done, despite being disturbed by a lot of issues and a lot of incidents in South Africa, but that has not yet translated into us gaining a majority vote, being number 2 or being number 3, now being relegated also. So I think that basically is trying to, put that into the debate and the discussion to say that, yes, this is what we have been doing, but that has not translated. So what is it therefore? Now the discussion within the National People Assembly will be, what is it that therefore we can do better? Because this is what we have done, but it has not translated, which is very significant in pushing, the debates as well as the dialogue in the national in the conference of the EFF forward. I think it's very important that he has to touch on that, because that basically lays the core and the foundation of the movement.
Yeah. The election performance of the EFF, obviously the EFF leader would not have been happy with. Top leaders of the party also leaving the EFF to join the MK party. Julius Malema has spoken today about the structures, the regional structures of the EFF not being fit for purpose. He's talked about the EFF Youth Command as a replacement for the EFF Student Command. Do you think that these are all steps that he's now taking to try and bring the party back to where it needs to be as we build up to 2026 and the local government elections?
I think it's very important because, yes, I think it's one of the steps that they are trying to take. Because if you look at, for instance, the student command, now it appeals more to people that are within the higher education sector, leaving more and more of the youth that are not within the sector itself, which basically, makes the student command not to be more relevant to the needs of the people that are not within the higher education sector. So now, for them to say that they will leave, the student command into the youth command, it becomes one of the steps to say that they want to appeal to the larger people in the society, because that there are a lot of young people in South Africa, not necessarily only in the higher education sector, but in South Africa in general. So it's very important that they are able to appeal even to those that are not in the higher sector. And again, one of the issues now is, if you are leaving the regional one, the regional structures, now doesn't that therefore make the decisions within the organization to be more and more centralized? Because if you're having these structures, such as the regional structures at the district level, it becomes very important in terms of decentralizing decisions, because we understand that elections themselves, even if they are at the national and the provincial level, but they are more at the local level, because that's where you need to gain the people at the local level. That's where you need to appeal more with the people at the local level. So now, if you are disbanding the regional structures, the district structures, that also becomes something that needs to be reconsidered by the EFF, because these are some of the structures that are very important in appealing and as well as ensuring that the people they follow the EFF at that particular level.
Marshall Dlamini, the EFF's General Secretary, telling us that the conference is about more than just leadership changes, and we've spoken about that with your analysis, Dr. Yende. So when we talk about leadership changes, though, and we know that there was a lot of talk about why Floyd Shivambu, for example, left the EFF in favor of the MK party. How do you reckon the leadership will end up being after the People's Assembly, and whether there will be a shake-up of even the so-called CIC?
No, I don't think that there will be more shake-up from this conference. I don't think that we will see something new in this conference, because we know that within the EFF, some of the positions, like the positions of the president of the EFF, the commander-in-chief, they are still not, they're still not well at that point or at that position where they can be contested even with different people. So I think we might not see as much, but of course we would see in terms of the new deputy coming in because Floyd Shivambu has left the organization. But I don't think that we would see much in terms of the leadership changes. I think perhaps it might be abstract for them to talk about the leadership change. It might be abstract for them to put it at that level, bringing hope that we might see the leadership changes in the EFF. Because if you look at the structures of the EFF and you look at how the EFF, manages its house, you could see that there's still some of the position within the top six that are not, open up for debates as well as open up for, discussion. So I think that perhaps we might not see as much, but we might see leadership in terms of someone coming through as the deputy president, because that position at the moment, it is vacant. But I don't think that would see something measure within the top six of the EFF.
Excuse me. Do you think that Floyd Shivambu might have been up for the leadership position, the CIC position of the EFF, had he still been with the party?
I don't think so. I don't think he would have been at that particular level, because that if you look at the EFF as well as that more and more, the EFF it still appeals more with Julius Malema, their leader. and more people, they still appeal as well as use Julius Malema as the face of the organization. So now if you are removing Julius Malema as the face of the organization, therefore, most people and many members of the EFF, as well as the loyalists of the EFF, might feel as if you have killed the face of the organization, because Julius Malema is still the face of the organization. So I don't think that Floyd Shivambu would have been at the position of campaigning or of contesting with Julius Malema. Him wanting to contest might have basically relegated him to the lower part of the organization. So I don't think that perhaps it would have been a wise idea even for him to contest that particular position.
Very interesting indeed, and I believe that Julius Malema has just finished his speech. If I take a look at that live picture there to the right of your screen, Dr. Nsizwazonke Yende is a political analyst with the University of Mpumalanga. Thanks very much indeed. As we continue to track the People Assembly, in fact, this live picture is still unfolding there, and Julius Malema is still at the podium.